Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And I'm just so happy because I have Vickie Dodd with me today. Hello, Vickie.
Hello, grateful to
And
be here.
and for those who are wondering what Vickie Dodd is all about, she has written this beautiful book, which is called Healing Through Sound, Awakening Your Audible Body. And Vicky, I think a good place to start would be to explain that second part of the title. I think the idea of healing through sound is familiar for many people, but awakening your audible body, I think, could use a bit of explanation.
Ah, awakening your audible body. Part of the reason that I started using sound in the long time ago, I don't know, about 60 years ago or so, a long time ago, was to wake up. I knew I needed to wake up. I could already feel the amnesia coming in, the sleep coming in, the forgetting coming in. And I'd already was suspected that wisdom was about being able to remember, and I could see how easily it was to go to sleep. And so it's like I started using my voice and movement, and yeah, voice and movement, to try to awaken, wake up, come on, wake up, stay awake, let's stay awake, let's stay alive, let's stay enlivened, you know? And and I really started talking to my body in this way and singing to it in this way. And because I think it's like I wanted to have a relationship, an audible relationship with my body. I didn't know what I meant by that, but I just knew that there was a way of having a communication with this being. And this was what, a long time ago, in the mid late 60s, uh, that I just really wanted to experiment. It was like this was my laboratory, you know. This was my laboratory. Is it possible to be in direct communication with this body? And then I started going at the audible body, the one that can speak, and and I can learn to listen to. Yeah. I don't know if that's what you're asking me, but that's
It
sort of what.
is, and I love that. But you talked about remembering, and I can imagine many people are thinking, remember what? What
Mm.
have we forgotten? What are we forgetting that we need to remember?
Oh, just about everything. Amnesia is on the run, and or the rise, and that's what really concerned me. Is that this is going back now many decades. I started noticing, because I was a body worker. I studied with Dr. Ida Rolf. I don't know if that means anything, but I, I really, I needed to get embodied, and I needed to know about this body that I had. I was like so many folks. I was that disconnected, and so I started noticing, in my inner vision or inner this coagulation at the brain stem, that it was sort of like, and I started calling it amnesia. That how easy it is for this kind of amnesia, like substance, to come in, and I can start forgetting. And I don't know if that had anything to do with now when I think about it, because it just now came to me because I've been thinking about that as I age. Is that has anything to do with, aging, you know, and forgetting. And it's like, how do we wake up? How do we keep liquid? How do we stay liquid? And that fascinates me more than, and it's been my path for these many decades, is how to stay. We are a liquid system. We are 70, 80% liquid. And one of the problems that happens, I don't care what illness we're talking about, what malady that we are referring to, one ingredient it's always going to be is that we've lost liquidity. Somehow our liquid has gotten congested, congealed, coagulated. And I think that part of our job as having a body is what we can do to stay more liquid. I'm not talking about that we're going to heal this or heal that, or we're never going to die or get any illness. I'm not going to be that. I know nothing about that, you know, but I do know that the more liquid I stay, the more vital I feel, you know.
So are you saying, because there's two things in what you've just
Yes.
said. So are you saying that we forget who we are? Is it the amnesia that happens when we are born, where we forget that we are spirit, or we forget that we have had past lives, we forget who our soul is? Is it that we forget? Or do we forget, or do you mean that we forget about how to be grounded in our bodies, connected to our emotions, that we shut off our emotions, and that we're also disconnected then from the natural world around us? Is it one? Is it both? Which is it?
It's all of that and more. It's you stated that beautifully. Um, I forget that I forget that I am nature. I forget that I am the same. I forget that my DNA, or that the DNA that I'm walking on, may have actually even more intelligence than my physical form. I forget the wisdom of nature. I forget the wisdom of my nature, you know. Um, and I think it's, unfortunately, I think it's really easy to happen.
It is easy to happen, particularly because we come from a culture that nurtures forgetfulness.
Yeah, beautifully put. Beautifully put.
It,
Yes.
we
Yes.
come from a culture that positively encourages us to disconnect from feeling, to self-medicate in ways that are unhealthy, to not eat natural foods, to eat everything. Every marketing exercise there has ever been in the last 100 or so years is encouraging us to forget.
Go, go to sleep. Go to sleep. Yes, I agree. You put that so beautifully. Um, yeah. And isn't that fascinating? That's the stuff that fascinates me, is why that's where it's easy to start thinking there's something called evil happening on the planet, you know? I mean, because otherwise, why would you want all these humans to become so dense and forget our nature?
Yeah.
You know, um, how do I not know that when I am digging inside this mountain, that I am digging in the heart and gut of my being? You know, how do I not know this? You know, why do, or or at least not notice, or at least not notice. I think that even scares me more, is that don't even notice. And yeah, so the sleepless, so that got my attention as an early on, seeing how fast that kind of amnesia. That's what I mean by the amnesia, that I forget that I am connected.
So the next thing you were talking about was sound and the importance of sound. And it made me think about creator myths where where singing is part of the process of creation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so come back to that and talk to us about that connection between sound and the actual physical body, because you were talking about it as being primarily water and the need to keep everything flowing. And some people will be used to that notion of keeping the energy flow, as in Chinese medicine and qi and so on, the importance of that. But you're actually talking about it in very physical terms. So tell us more and tell us how sound is connected with this.
Well, you know, the physics of sound is that sound breaks up crystallizations, sound changes form, sound creates form. So that on some level, I'm a very simple woman, so on some level I keep it just that simple. It's like, let me change let me change my form. Let me change. And sound does change our form. I mean, we are liquid. If I sound, I create a movement inside this fluid system that starts rearranging my form, you know? Now, I'm doing that not just to shapeshift, but I'm doing that uh, to reawaken places that are getting into a stupefied, there's a word like that, uh, state that I kind, you can kind of just get, oh, you can kind of just get stupid, dumbed down by certain sounds or by certain lifestyles or by it can start dumbing us down. So I started noticing this as a young woman. It's like, oh, I could see that I could be lulled right into a sleep place that I don't necessarily want to be in. I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew that I knew that I wanted to wake up, you know, and I wanted to keep a certain vitality going in this system. And I found that my voice could encourage that.
Well, we do know, as you're talking about getting into a state of being stupefied, and that's made me think about how music is being marketed, or the type of music that is being marketed is exactly the type of music that might be used for hypnotic purposes
Mhm.
in rituals, etc., with drumming, which used by a shamanic culture are about awakening and connecting with with something, whereas as it's being used in our culture, it is very much about doing the opposite
Mhm.
and putting people into a hypnotic state, which then brings in messages of forgetting, that
Mhm.
as we would see it, that disconnect us from each
Mhm.
other, from ourselves, from nature, etc. So we can see that. So now I'm even more excited because here's something that we can do for ourselves,
Yes.
because you're using your voice
Yes.
to wake up. How do you do that?
Well, I mean, there's many ways. It's not like, and then you do this, and then you do that, and it's not that kind of a system. But uh, but I awakened my own voice, and I began this initially by just working with the vowels. Nearly every language. There are languages that do not have vowels, but most of our Western languages that we're exposed to have vowels of some sort, and vowels were always considered a very sacred part of language. And so I started with that. I didn't know what I was doing, but I also was part of the initial primal therapy type things, and um, because this was the early mid '60s, so we were trying to just get some movement going. Thank goodness we were willing to do that. Um, so just starting to make sounds was a huge. It was huge. It was almost impossible to get people to make sound. It was like pulling teeth. I mean, it's hard to believe now, but that's what it was like. It's like, I can't make any sound. We were frozen. We can't make, and if we are going to make a sound, it has to be the right sound. You know, it, and so there were all these rules about sound, and and so I just started doing things called empty, and I said, I just need to empty, I just need to empty that which is not mine, is how I used to call it. Just stuff gets on. If we're highly sensitive people, I don't know anyone that's not, you know. I mean, it's just degrees of what that means. And let's just sound. So that's how it began. I just sort of made up that word, to be quite honest. Sometimes I wish I'd have made up a different word, because when I was saying sound, I meant so much by that word. I meant color, I meant movement, I meant frequency, I meant vibration, I meant, a lot of things, not just the vocal sound, you know, but it got stuck. Words get stuck and you don't even know that it's getting stuck. All I know is that this is a liquid system. I know that life that we know it, if we live in large cities, if we live in families, if we live in a lot of hostility, or there's sadness, I mean, life. If we live in a lot of life, you know, our liquid becomes affected. And that's all I need to know. I don't even need to have any analysis about it. I just know that I am affected. And so if I start using my voice in a way just to keep me liquid, the more liquid my body can stay, the healthier I'm going to be physically, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. My dishealth, my my not being healthy is disturbed when my liquid becomes stuck.
Yes, that's the bit that I also, that's another bit that I find very exciting is the idea of shifting things that are stuck. Because being a hypnotherapist myself,
Yeah.
that is stuff of my daily encounters with people is helping them to
Yes.
shift stuck. And
Yes.
so that I find very interesting. Can you maybe demonstrate
Oh, I'd
um,
love to. It's so much
a sound?
easier to demonstrate than talk about it, if that's all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm grateful you're asking me. I've had a lot of interviews the last few months because of this book coming out. No one ever asked me to sound.
Oh,
And
but
I mean, I know. So, because it's in the listening that I learn, it's in the listening that people go, oh, that's what she means. So, it's in the listening that we give permission for people uh, to sound themselves. They're not going to sound like me. We're not going to go, now it's this pitch and we have to stay at this pitch. That is not the kind of sound I mean. It's like, what's going on in my body? You know, I mean, you and I are several thousand miles apart and many hours apart, right? About 12 hours or 8 hours or nine, enough. And so we've had different days already. I'm just starting and mine. And so Yalamaha anana shakatana ya itna shana no malaha ama yimo na yeshidina little shakatana ye yam no. So I'm just kind of moving some of the sleep out of my body, moving some of the last 7 hours or so, coming into morning, coming in like yellow yellow oh yeah I know, and it could look a zillion billion ways. It could look so many ways, or sound so many different ways. So when I've taught it through these many decades, just like finding your own form, just staying honest. As soon as I feel like I'm not being honest and I'm trying to go, oh, that's a good sound. Ooh, I like that one. That's when I know, okay, let's come back. Let's start again. This is not about performing. This is not about performing. I've worked through the years, I've had the privilege of working with brilliant, brilliant performing artists. And it's actually more challenging often, this is just a generic statement, for people who are trained to be brilliant performers to find just their voice. Because it's not the right, it's not there's so many different, they've been, a lot of times we get trained out of ourselves.
something that occurred to me as I was listening to you and watching you is that actually we we do create sound to express emotion.
Yes.
I mean, there's laughter for a start,
Oh.
but there's the frustrated sounds that we might make, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in fact, my dog makes frustrated sounds that are not
Uh-huh.
bark.
Yeah.
It's a real kind of kind of sound, very similar to something that we might do.
Yeah.
And so we do. And I think what you're saying is that we can use that. We can use that to allow things to flow. And when I think about those sounds that I'm referring to, they're all about releasing emotion.
Yeah.
So here we're taking that to another level, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. So first I want to just empty or just get current. Let me get to where I am right now. I don't know what needs to be, but let me get the sleep done. Let me get the argument away. Let me get the congestion on the streets or, whatever is flowing through. Let me just give it an expression because I'm a liquid system. If I give it expression, it will start transforming. I don't, it's not about analysis. It's not about, first I just want to it's like getting if I were a painter, it's like getting come, what do you say, a palette, getting a clear surface to start with. So first I want whatever isn't to be there, let me empty that, you know, so, not, but not to study it, not
Yes.
to study.
It's
I'm not even close to being needing to study it. This has nothing to do with me or you or anything. It's just stuff.
yeah. And so it's getting the intellect out of the way.
Getting the intellect out of the way because we're going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's like, yeah, that's just stuff, you know.
Thinking about, you talk about sounding different parts of your body. So we can get our heads around sound allowing energy to flow within us. How are we sounding specific parts of the body?
Well, first of all, it's all about listening more than I don't know what needs to be sounded. So first I would do what I was just starting to do a little bit of emptying of just at random sounds, what is just coming up, um, to actually start seeing any kind of commodity. I don't know why I want to go into Spanish, but what is congealed, like uh, what actually belongs there, because I don't know. Is this mine? Is this yours? Is this theirs? What is it? Let me just sound it. Let me get it liquid again. Let me get it liquid again. This is not the time to go, oh, I wonder what that sound means. Oh, we'll waste so much time doing that. And it doesn't mean anything. Most of the time, it doesn't mean anything. It is just a opening for us to go through. It's just waving something. This go this direction. It's not like you don't stop there. You just go, oh, thank you, and continue. Thank you, and continue, you know? And because it's taking us deeper. The sounds are taking us deeper. I don't know if I'm
So,
asking.
sorry. So are you saying that as we sound, we begin to feel certain parts of the body?
As we sound, we're starting to, that could be what takes place, but it's not a rule. Um, but it could be. Uh, Often I need to sound just to move the clutter. I need to start with just removing the clutter. What is in the way of my listening? What is in the way? Is there an emotional something going on? And so I'm going to find it everywhere I look. You know, uh, so it's obviously saying, look, we need to be addressed. So I need to give some expression to whatever is coming up. You know, not going, oh, I don't want that one. It doesn't matter. If that's what's coming up, let me sound it. Let it have its time. You
I,
know,
I like that.
you know.
In your book, you talk about something else that actually I haven't come across this before. So this is to do with root patterns. And so tell us about that. How do our roots play a part in sound healing?
Did you say group patterns?
No,
Oh,
root.
root patterns. Oh, yes. Um, so how do root patterns, tell me that question again.
How do our roots then play a part in this sound healing?
I must acknowledge my roots. I must acknowledge my roots. I, that's why many of us have spent years doing family constellations, doing different things, those kind of roots. And then we keep going deeper, deeper. That's just the beginning roots, going deeper and deeper and deeper to my roots. Can I be in acceptance with all of my being is where I need to get or want to get. Because then it's like I'm wanting to cease the fight inside this being, you know. Uh, it has very little to do with how I feel about it, you know. But I need to learn how to love this being unconditionally, whatever that might take. So that becomes my journey. Teach me how to love you unconditionally. I do not know how. You know, I can come in with so much, I mean, I can be born with so many belief systems, judgments about how it ought to be, how I ought to be, how you ought to be, how they should have been, could have been, would have been, you know. And mainly, can I just get to how it is so that I can start from there, you know? Because I don't know. I think it's the worst thing that ever happened to me. I can tell you would agree with me. We would both just sit here and say, oh, that was just awful, Vickie. And then we wait 10 years and we meet again. And I tell you, oh, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me because so I so that's what life has shown me is that I don't know the difference between good news and bad news. I think it's bad news that ends up being good news. I think it's good news that ends it actually is just news. I don't know if I'm making any sense here with you, but I guess just not to be too attached to it as
You
it's news.
are.
Good.
And, and I'm struck by what you're talking about because really what we're saying is our ancestry matters. And because it creates these patterns that we need to understand, and so that we're able to bring the healing to that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are several questions that stem from this. Um, and I think, but I will say that this is more important again in our culture than it has ever been, precisely because it's not done and because we are so fragmented from our ancestry. This is there are many blessings to travel, but this is the curse of travel, is that we are uprooted
Mm-hmm.
and that we lose connection with our roots.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us transplant ourselves more successfully than others. And many are kind of transplanted through trauma because they leave because of trauma. And then they forget. And in the forgetting, they don't realize that their roots are not as deep as they need to be for health. So I think that what you're saying is really very profound and very important. So are you then saying that sounding can help us to reconnect to our ancestral past?
Or deeper than our ancestral path. I'm more interested in going deeper than to my most recent ancestry.
Yes, I'm
Here a
thinking,
long time. I think that my soul has been here for a lot longer than my genetics in that way. At least that's my belief system. I can't get married to my genetics. I think we get into trouble when we marry our genetics. Uh, uh, I mean, I mean, be grateful for what you are. First, come to peace with whoever you are and whatever they be. That is, once I come to peace with that, then it's transformed. But as long as I came from people that would not let go of their ancestry. And so I think they were great teachers for me of seeing the importance of letting go and not to romance any particular one. And, how do I become a human being? How do I become one amongst others how do I stop this being always needing to separate myself into these, and well, our society separates us, even, but that's an inside job I'm talking about. They're going to separate us no matter what. They're going to make me white. They're going to make you dark. They're going to make you this. They're going to make you that. We are going to be separated. And not even that that's wrong, but it becomes wrong to me. Um, uh, it does something else. It puts us against one another instead of knowing that we are this variety of races. We're a variety of colors. We're a variety, which is really quite gorgeous, quite wonderful. I'm so grateful I've got to live with so many varieties, and uh, but it's always there. It's always there to say, well, I'm not, you are. You are, I'm, whatever. It's and maybe that's just how I'm not going to see it change. I know that. I know in my lifetime, the little bit that we see of the I don't know. Us humans, we just don't know much about how to get along. You know, we've got to find something wrong with somebody or something. They've got something I want, or if I dot it dot. I mean, we are just really fascinating in that way. That's why it's such an in. I know I'm talking about several different things, sociological, psychologically, because they all live together. They don't live separately. So to start with one piece, all of a sudden you're finding, well, I've got to go into the whole root of it again. And what were those roots, and where were your roots? My roots were in Appalachia. Well, my roots were in Thailand. My roots were in, where were my roots? Those were part of my roots. But then if I keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, remember when you were a child, they'd say, you keep deep and deep, digging that hole, you're going to end up in China. That fascinated me from the very beginning. I thought, really? And all of a sudden it gave me this idea that it's just right through here and then over there. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but as a child's mind, I love having a child's mind, because then I could get that, oh, I could dig to China right from where I am. I'm that close, you know. I don't know how I got there. Zooming out here, but uh, I I have always loved the possibility. I've always loved differences, and I've loved the possibility of our sameness. I am so grateful I have been a body worker for at least 6 decades. And so I have touched and known so many people. I've had the privilege of living and traveling to different places with different peoples. Uh, this, I think if people would travel, if they would get out and meet people from all, it is probably our greatest teachings.
Yes, and I think that that's the blessing of travel. So it's one of those things is that being exposed to different possibilities
Oh my
opens,
goodness
op-
gracious.
which is crucial, I think. So I guess maybe the next question I have is, what are your roots? How did you get into all of this?
Well, that's a good question. Uh, I came from very simple people, so on that kind of rooting, but basically it was nature. That's how I got into all of this. That was my first teacher, and probably still remains my deepest teacher. And I'm so grateful that in my later years here, I get to live so much in nature because I spend a lot of time on concrete, which I'm also grateful for because it's a whole different teaching. Because underneath that concrete is earth, and uh, oh, I'm sorry, I just spun out there. Um, but it all came from everything I know came from nature. Absolutely everything I know. And I was really fortunate that I did live, uh, spent my childhood in a big old walnut tree, black walnut tree. And my girlfriends and I would meet up in this tree. We would climb up. I mean, and it was a great big tree, and but we'd had places to put our feet, and then like places to sit around up there. And I'm just so grateful when I think about it in later years, like, oh, that I had the privilege. That is now a privilege that I had being raised in more of a rural uh, country side, and because it would have been completely different. My family moved to Chicago when I was about 11 or so. And I'm grateful for that too, because all of a sudden I've got all these different languages that I'm hearing. Oh God, I loved it. Languages and smells and foods that I'd never been around, and different colors of people of all sorts. And it was during the time where there was so much immigration. So no one is speaking English, American English. They're all speaking English from translating it. And so it was wonderful to listening, and how it was changing me and rearranging me to hear all these different languages that I would have never been exposed to. So I love humanity in that way. I love our mixing up. And I live in the United States, and I learned from traveling a great deal what a privilege that is to be able to live with so many different people. And it wasn't until I started living in Europe, it's like, and at that time, like countries were very, what do you say, uh, what is that? Germans lived in Germany, Italians lived in Italian, French. I'd never seen that because we were so mixed and matched and mixed up in the United States, which is it's gotten a lot mixed and matched, mixed up in Europe now as well. But I'm going back a few decades, and when it was really, if you weren't if you weren't German, then you were just there working for a while or a student. That's how it was, and so that was a big teaching for me. That was a big teaching for me to I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just wandering.
No, no, not at all. I think as there are definitely ups and downs to every way of being, and where you have a cultural cohesion that becomes diluted, then something is lost because people are disconnected from their own roots, on all counts. But then equally, the opportunity to engage and mix brings its own excitement. So it's about keeping a balance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's actually quite delicious that people had to. I mean, I know that we love our roots. It's always been this or this. And then that's why the America was somehow like such a strange place because we were everybody. We were absolutely everybody. And we couldn't brag about our lineage very much because it just went, oh, you know, and uh, and I think that's actually it creates an adaptogen, being able to be a real, I'm a plant person, so it means that I can grow anywhere, you know.
It's
And
certainly the challenge that many of us have to develop within ourselves.
yes.
Vic, thank you for an absolutely wonderful and fascinating conversation. Absolutely living up to your beautiful book. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed talking with you, and I really would appreciate if you let me know how to get in touch with you with your astrology
Absolutely,
work. And
absolutely.
uh, I hope I thank you. Just thank you. I know I kind of went off on different ways. I haven't had my tea yet. And
But that's what makes the conversation fun, is exploring different tangents. And just to remind everyone, the book that we are discussing is called Healing Through Sound, Awakening Your Audible Body. This is what it looks like. And I'll be putting a link to it in the description box. Vickie, if people wanted to find you, is there a website?
I guess there is. It's called Sacred Sound Works. It's one word, Sacred Sound Works, and they can write to me there, or they can even write to me at Vickie Dodd at Gmail. I still do private sessions, over the phone. I've been doing that for 40 years, and it works. So
Yes.
I love meeting people in that way and teaching in that way. But
Well, I'll be putting a link to the book, the website, and your email address
oh,
also
that would be
in the
wonderful.
description box
That's
so
kind.
that people can get in touch with you. And I hope that they do, because
Thank
it
you.
would be wonderful for everyone to benefit from your wonderful work. Thank you again.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be meeting you. Much success to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching. And next time, we're going to be looking at iridology. Until then, goodbye.
Bye bye.